Okay, good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our Spring Royal Lancers webinar. My name is Rupert Maitland-Titterton. Just two quick housekeeping points before we start. We'd ask you to put your questions for the question and answer session in the tab at the bottom of your screen. And also at the end, we're going to have you're going to be invited to give your feedback through for the webinar. This is important for us because it means we can get it better next time and improve really the opportunity to pass information to you guys and to get questions back again. So a very warm welcome. I'm just very quickly going to go through tonight's agenda and then hand straight over. So in a moment, the Colonel of the Regiment, Richard Charrington, will give you an update on what the Regimental Association has been up to. We'll then pass across to Lieutenant Colonel Will Richmond, who will give us an update on what the serving regiment's been up to. Then hand across to Sergeant Major Tony Bonds, who will give us some views of Op Granby. Some of us can remember it from 30 years ago. And then we'll go over to Simon Vaughan Edwards, who will talk to us about the Royal Lancer Transition Project. A lot of work going on in there. Then we go across to Tom Hughes, who will take us through a little bit on V-Lancer. And then we've got our question and answer session with the commanding officer and the Colonel of the Regiment. And that's really where we'd like your questions, which we can put direct to both of these individuals. And then this will be then closed out. The session will be closed out by the Colonel of the Regiment, Colonel Richard Charrington, with a hard stop at 7 o'clock. So without any further ado now, I'm going to hand over to the Colonel of the Regiment, Colonel Richard Charrington. Thank you.
Thanks, Rupert, and good evening, everybody. It's great to see so many of you joining us on this, our second webinar. I trust that despite the lockdown, you remain in good health and great spirits. As Rupert's just been through, we've got a galaxy of stars lined up today, so I don't intend to say too much myself, but before I hand over to them. By way of just setting the scene, last time we went through the results of the survey for the Regimental Association. The feedback we got was overwhelmingly positive, but it did highlight three critical areas where we feel it really contributes to our sense of being a single extended Lancer family and that looks out for each other, and that we could actually do perhaps a little bit better in those areas. The first of those was really a lack of understanding about how the various elements of the Regimental Association fit together. And by that I mean the serving regiment, the OCA, the museum, home headquarters, and how they all work together to meet the needs of this broad Lancer community. We hope that through the webinar that we've done and these ongoing webinars, the newsletter and the briefings to the regiment, that we're beginning to address that problem. And that, you know, our Lancer community really understands what's there for them and how they can contribute to it. The second part was the need to support Lancers. It came out very strongly as they transition into civilian life and then thereafter, actually how they, you know, kind of work this Lancer network to ensure that they career transition as well as they possibly can. And Simon Vaughan Edwards nobly stepped up after the last webinar to offer to lead that particular piece. and I'm really looking forward to hearing what he's got to say about the progress that they've made. And then finally, we need to ensure that we support Lancers, whatever position they find themselves in. And again, Mark Can and a number of others step forward to help address that. And it's often an area that's been left to Home Headquarters and the OCA really to deal with. But Tom Hughes is going to talk to us about a very innovative approach, try saying that again, to the work that's being done to improve that. And I think that's going to be a very exciting thing to hear about. We've got two other speakers that Rupert mentioned. The first is Sergeant Major Tony Bond, who's agreed to swing the lantern for a little bit to commemorate the ending of the First Gulf War. It was a conflict in which all of our antecedent regiments were represented in quite considerable numbers. I felt that probably rather than having a sort of commanding officer's view or a kind of strategic level piece, actually to get a view from the turret was would be more interesting. And Sergeant Major Tony, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Our final or next speaker actually is going to be the new commanding officer, and I'm going to hand over to him in just a second. But and he's going to tell you obviously what the serving regiment has been up to. But before I do that, I wanted to make a couple of name checks to use the vernacular. First, the Regimental Sergeant Major, Mr. Pook. I hope some of you have realised that he was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal in the New Year's Honours list. That's a pretty significant achievement. It's a very rare recognition of his outstanding performance in that role, and we've got a huge amount to be grateful for. The next couple of names reflect our extending the Lancer love to other parts of the Royal Armoured Corps. Chris Kierstead has been selected to command the Queen's Dragoon Guards, and Martin Morrissey will command the Royal Dragoon Guards in the near future. At the same time, we've got James Lance commanding the Royal Armoured Corps Training Regiment, and by that kind of count, I reckon that Lancers are going to be commanding about a third of the RAC's regular regiments. That's a pretty good testament to the strength of our regiment at the moment. And finally, I want to pay tribute to Will's predecessor, Adam Foden. And he must have had a desperately, and I hope he's listening this evening, we'll find out in a moment, I hope. He must have had a pretty disappointing and frustrating time in command. He had so many opportunities lost, the trips to Bathurst through COVID, and then the flick-flack and the operational tours, etc. Despite that, he did an exceptional job in leading the regiment, maintaining its esprit de corps and its professionalism. And I think a number of you have commented on the difficulty of, say, keeping fit, but also keeping those core military skills going when you're on the end of an electronic piece of string. I'd just like to say I think we owe him a great deal, and we wish him and his family the very best for the future. So on that note, it's over to Will. There's no pressure there, Will, and over to you.
Great, thanks, Colonel. And so for those who don't know me, my name's Will Richmond, and I took over from Adam almost exactly a month ago. I was last at regimental duty in 2016, since when I've been Chief of Staff of one of the armoured brigades. I've attended the Staff College. I did a short stint in a placement at the Royal Bank of Scotland, unusually. And since then, I've been working at the Ministry of Defence on the integrated review. So there is a sense in which if things go wrong for the Army, when that's announced very shortly, it might be my fault. I apologise. So I'm going to speak very briefly, perhaps for 7.5 minutes or so, just to talk about my first impressions of the regiment on coming back to it after a few years, some notable achievements that individuals have made recently, what we've been up to over the past few months, and talk a little bit about what is in store for us in the future. So just to build on what Colonel Crash was saying a moment ago, my initial impressions of the regiment as I come back is that it is in absolutely sparkling form. It is chock full of enthusiastic, capable people who are full of initiative. And I have to say that it could not be better regarded by the chain of command than it is. And it's not just my gut that tells me that. These statistics appear to prove it. So our strength as of today is 479 of 527 posts are filled. So that's 91%, and it keeps rising. And I think it's risen 2% in the short time that I've been back already. So we've set ourselves the aiming mark of being at 100%. And I genuinely believe that we're going to achieve that with recruits coming in at the bottom, but we're also getting so much interest from people transferring from other units and also people rejoining, which is fantastic. Our deployability is routinely the highest in all the units in the field army at about 84%. We managed to maintain our equipment level availability at about 80% all the time. And that might not sound so good to the old and bold, but when you think about how old it is, how tired it is, sometimes it's difficult to get spares, the difficulties of whole fleet management and the skill fade when we don't get to use it as much as perhaps we did. I think that's pretty impressive. And on the sustainment side of things, on all our big inspections that we had last year, we received the strongest of strong passes. And so how does that feel from the divisions and the brigades point of view? Well, we appear to be their divisional and brigade reconnaissance battle group of choice. In their minds, the only units of those out there that could genuinely fight tonight. And I've spoken to the GOC recently, and he absolutely trusts us. So the Lancers are a great brand in the field army. So what does that mean to me? Well, carry on doing the excellent things that we're already doing, and let's keep innovating. You know, I talk to the team a lot about mission command and empowerment, and I really believe that. You know, I can set myself targets of 100%, but unless everyone out there in the serving regiment at ERE and surrounding us, as many people on this call will be, are doing those things, getting the brand out there, doing things in such a good way that people want to join and want to rejoin, then it's not going to happen. And I'd also like to echo what Colonel Crash was saying about my predecessor. Adam really has done an absolutely incredible job as commanding officer, and has left me something that, frankly, I could only get wrong, because at the moment it's going so very well indeed. So I said I'd talk a little bit about recognition. Some, but perhaps not all of you, will know that in the recent promotions to Lieutenant Colonel, there were 2 Lancers on the list, Majors Nick Vi and Jules Fuller, which is great. Slightly less recently, but this year, of the RAC promotions that we've had in total, 21% of those from Staff Sergeant to WO2 were Royal Lancers, which is pretty impressive indeed. Colonel Crash has already mentioned Mr. Pook's MSM, which is great. In addition to that, though, in the same honours list, Sergeant Major Quinn and Acting Sergeant Major Smith 312 received commendations from GOC 3 Div, and Sergeant Major Kelly received a commendation from our own brigade commander, 1 Brigade. And while I've got Mr. Pook in mind, it's worth noting, of course, that his tenure as RSM will come to an end in April. And so I couldn't possibly miss this opportunity to thank him for his absolutely invaluable service to the regiment. He's moving on not very far away to Headquarters 4 Brigade as the Command Sergeant Major, but I genuinely hope that we will see him back at regimental duty in a more senior position in the not too distant future. Mr. Pook will hand over to Mr. Weaver, who's currently on operations in Ukraine, and I know he is also an outstanding soldier who'll do a brilliant job. Some other names out there that we recognised at the back end of last year: Lance Corporal Fletcher is in the Great Britain Nordic Skiing Development Squad, which is something of an accolade. And we also have the captain of the Royal Armoured Corps rugby team in Lance Corporal Foster. And those of you following on social media, I think will have seen what the team was getting up to while we were on our recent deployment in Manchester on Operation Rescript. Not content with looking after the people of Manchester by doing mass testing, we also managed to raise £5,000 for Broughton House, which is a veterans charity in Manchester. So what? I guess this is a massively capable group of people who, as I was saying, display really quite remarkable initiative and are seeking and achieving excellence. It is one hell of a team to be in. And I kind of feel that amongst ourselves, we are developing, or perhaps have developed, a habit of winning, which is a great thing in barracks, but I think it's something which also bleeds over into our conduct on operations. This is a unit that can fight without doubt. So a little bit on recent activity and then what the future holds for us. Two big operations in our recent past, Operation Elgin in Kosovo, D Squadron, between late last year and spring of this year. And I have to say, having virtually visited them recently, they are not content with just doing the job. They're going to leave that place far better than they found it. And of course, Operation Rescript, our support to the local authorities in Manchester for mass testing, led by Battle Group Headquarters, but with B and C squadrons and plenty of Headquarters Squadron people there. That started on the 3rd of January and finished on the 26th of February. As we left that, we could not have been more highly regarded by that regional chain of command. And also it's interesting to note, I think, that UK operation, perhaps unusually, was genuinely enjoyed by our people. And you might ask yourselves why, but everyone's got a dog in that fight, haven't they? So that was absolutely a really impressive effort. And thank you to everyone for that. Looking ahead to our commitments in 2021, I'll just fling through the squadrons quickly. So A Squadron has just about a week ago deployed on what's called Operation Orbital, which is in Ukraine, delivering training to Ukrainian brigades. And then later on in the year, once they finish with that, they'll deploy on an exercise called Mayan Warrior in Belize, dismounted in the jungle. B Squadron are getting themselves ready now to deploy on Elgin back to Kosovo after a 6-month interlude from the Scots Guards. And C Squadron's big event this year will be to deploy down to Salisbury Plain on exercise Iron Storm in support of a brigade as they exercise a large armoured battle group under command back in about September and October. D Squadron are going to deploy to Kazakhstan on an exercise called Step Eagle in June and July. And of course, we're also looking to do some battle group training as well. So there's something called Exercise Somme Lancer towards the back end of the year, where we'll go back out to some of our old favourite stomping grounds. We'll be based in Senlager, using the CAT on ranges, on the training area in private land, integrating other arms into the battle group. We're trying to make it a multinational exercise and with a live enemy, so we can achieve excellence in our core role. Looking slightly further ahead, and these things are therefore less certain, I hope, and I'm pretty sure we will be able to deploy 2, possibly 3 squadrons out to the United States in 2022 on an exercise called Diamondback. And that's in preparation for the fact that we plan at this stage between October 22 and September 23 to send D, A and C squadrons, each on a 4-month rotation to what's called Kabrit, Poland. So the enhanced forward presence led by NATO in Poland. And the aim, which I took over from Adam, which I think is absolutely right, is that every squadron should have 1 major training event and 1 operation on its horizon, which is a pretty exciting place to be. Longer term, of course, I'm sure lots of you will be interested in what happens about Ajax and in what happens about where we are based. On current plans, the regiment won't receive any Ajax until 2023, and as things stand, that is when we do expect to receive our first vehicles. So that's after the HCR and the RDG. And then again, on current plans, not before 2024 would be when the regiment is due to move from North Yorkshire down to Warminster. So there's one other thing that might be in our future, which I can talk about, but which I wouldn't wish people to say is definitely happening. There is a possibility of a battle group level deployment to Mali on what's called MINUSMA. If that were to happen, I believe it would be in perhaps 2023 or 2024. So some time away. It's absolutely not in the plot at the moment. It is not a given, but there are plenty of people out there, including the GOC, who think the Lancers would be the right people to send on that operation. So we'll see how that goes. So just by way of conclusion, I think I find a regiment in as good a shape as I could possibly hope for. I have to thank my predecessor and my other predecessors before Adam for the great work that they've done. So really, thank you, Adam. This is a brilliant regiment to come back to, and thank you also to everyone serving at regimental duty who is doing such a great job. And now I'm going to finish. You'll see a short video filmed and made by those at regimental duty to give you a bit of a flavour of that life, and then we'll go straight on to Tony Bond. Thank you.
I miss the army from the day that I walked out the gate. I miss, you know, the camaraderie, the lads, the banter, the lifestyle, and the challenges it brings. So the rejoining process for me personally, I found it really easy. It was really straightforward. You know, you're talking 3 or 4 months. Within 5 weeks of being back at the regiment, I was in Belize, and you know, what an experience. That was like my first exercise, going back and was able to dust off the cobwebs. Certainly when I left Belize, I felt like a soldier again. Originally, I joined the army, I was 20 years old. I joined the Queen's Royal Lancers. After returning from Herc 17 in Afghanistan, I had some family commitments. We decided at that time it was a good time to get out and try and make something of myself in Civvy Street. Civvy Street was quite difficult, finding a job, being able to support my family and moving back home and trying to find a house all at the same time. When you make that leap, I would certainly say from experience, it's quite difficult. There's not that safety net what you've got in the army, where there's always somebody on hand to give you advice or to help you or steer you down a path that's going to benefit you. In Civvy Street, it's you and you alone. Landed a job working on the oil rigs, and then I found a job locally as an electrician. I had a goal in mind that, you know, I wanted to sort of set up a life for my kids and my family. I achieved that, and then I sort of found myself thinking, what's next? You do take things for granted in the army, stuff like medical care, dental care, gym membership, you know, all these things in Civvy Street cost, whilst you've got other things to pay for. Even accommodation, for a single guy in the army, you've got your own self-contained flat, which costs you pennies. If you've got a family accommodations subsidised by the army. Right now, we're deployed out in Greater Manchester to supporting the local authority asymptomatic test sites. If it wasn't for COVID, I'd be on a career course. One of my main goals is to be a crew commando. You know, there's a lot of things in the pipeline coming up, re-rolling onto a Jackal platform and to then move on to the Ajax platform. We've got a lot of overseas exercises, some exciting operational tours coming up also. You know, the army offers job security and there is a clear path to progression you just don't get in Civvy Street. The army invests a lot of time and effort into the individual. If you're thinking about rejoining the army, definitely I would consider it. It welcomes people with open arms to teach the younger guys and help them come along.
For those of you who don't know me, my name's Tony Bond. I was a troop leader in the First Gulf War, up Granby, and I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what we did and how it went. I was troop leader of a guided weapons troop. We were attached to C Squadron, 16th Lancers, and the whole regiment was out on Op Granby. Once we'd sat around waiting in Saudi Arabia for weeks, it was time to go. And once the berm was breached by the American engineers, the regiment formed up and off we went. Our first tasks were to put out a screen across the whole of the division, and C Squadron, who I was attached to, was on the left-hand side. And on my left, or our left, were the Americans. Once we formed up and we could hear the battle going on, the objectives were well laid out, and the main battle groups and the tanks were then engaging the enemy. After a couple of hours of being in position, my troop observed a large reinforcements Iraqi reinforcements coming in into the area. We reported and then started to engage with our swing fire missiles. With the swing fire having such a long range, we could pick up and engage way before any of our reconnaissance partners. So we started to engage. We hit a few tanks. The first one was hit with the swing fire missile and literally blew the turret clean off. So that was the first time I think the swing fire had been used in war, and it was very effective. We also engaged trucks full of infantry and small armor. Once the battle had commenced, they really didn't know where these strikes were coming from because it was very quiet. There was no noise. It was just the purr of the rocket motor, and then it would hit and destroy. After a few hours of the battle and the airstrikes were going in on our right, the fog of war, dust and smoke everywhere, we found out that an Iraqi tank had burst through the screen at some point and got behind us and into our rear echelon. It then burst forward again, and one of my call signs started to engage with the swing fire missiles, but at too short a range. But it put the fear of God into the Iraqi tank commander. He then got down inside his turret and poodled off before, within 10 minutes, it was engaged and destroyed. We sat around in that position for another couple of hours and then was called back in to our rear echelon to rearm. On returning and starting to replenish, we found out that 2 of our squadron had been killed during the action with the rogue tank. That was Sergeant Mick Dowling, MM of the Remy, and Lance Corporal Taff Evans of the Remy. Lance Corporal Evans and Sergeant Dowling were on the same crew, and they tried to engage the commander of the tank with their GPMG, and to no avail, and both were killed outright. Once replenished, we were back on the line again, and again, A-10s floating around, our American cousins on our left engaging, and it was a very busy day. Once the day was over, we moved off and had a long march and leaguered up in darkness at around 11:30 in the evening. At first light in the morning, our boot troop, commanded by Sergeant Major Ralph Ritchie and his men, found that we had loads of trenches and bunkers around where we'd leaguered, and they dug out an Iraqi captain of the anti-aircraft brigade. He was in his 50s and he'd been conscripted into the army, and he was a Olympian. He'd been a fencer for Iraq in one of the Olympics. And once the air strikes had gone in, they'd all decided to give up, and he found it the best thing to do was to stay where he was, go underground and wait to give himself up. From there, we moved all the way back into, or all the way forward, I should say, into Kuwait, and it was all over. So it was hurry up and wait. A lot of people decided to see what good work they could do within Kuwait with the SQMS, Dave Salter setting up transport to pick up any spare rations and water and take it down into Kuwait City and try and find some needy people. And that wasn't too difficult. I think they found a hospital and an orphanage that they then distributed the water and the food out to. And again, there was still loads to do. One of the things that was done on the battlefield was a huge amount of artillery shells, tank shells, and so on were collected up. And they decided to dig a huge trench and bury all this ammunition. Every morning, we'd send off 4 or 5 men on a fatigue party to go and collect all this ammunition and then lay it in the trench that they dug with a scent dozer. I think after about 2 days of doing this, one of the soldiers, I'm not sure from which unit, because we all had to send fatigue parties, decided to throw a phosphorus grenade into the trench. And for the next couple of hours, we had the biggest firework display in the history of war. I, at that time, was talking to a professor from Chivernham, talking about the effects of swing fire and the shockwave when the trench started to explode, blew him off the compo box that he was sitting on, taking details of what we'd been through. On a lighter note, one of my soldiers had got fed up with the compo that we were eating and decided to write a letter to his family and ask them to send him some mixes to go in to the meals that we were having. And his mum duly obliged and sent 12 packets of goulash mix. The only thing was, for the last 3 weeks, we'd been eating nothing but, yes, you guessed it, goulash. Well, that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm going to hand over now to Simon Vaughan-Edwards, who's going to carry on.
Thank you, Tony. So the Colonel of the Regiments asked us to put some thought into career transition, with the whole idea looking to build a program that's going to support Lancers that have made the decision to leave the army and move into Civvy Street, with the aim of giving them the confidence, the focus and direction and the knowledge they're going to need to make a seamless transition. As we heard, it can be quite a tricky journey. So the whole idea is to equip them with as much information as we possibly can before they even start down that route. As with all things military, there's good 3 phases to this. And we've put together a crack team of ex-Lancers who are headhunters and recruiters to come and work with me and get this moving. The first phase is we're going to come to the regiment and we're going to provide career transition workshops. Ideally, there's going to be one-to-one, but dependent on numbers, it'll either be one-to-one or a seminar format. But the aim is to sit down with you and run through the whole transition process, giving you an idea of what it's like on Civvy Street, the various jobs, the various industries, working through your CV and other collateral, giving you tips for interviews and networking, etc. We're looking at getting the first one of these in late spring, early summer. We're talking to the regiment about May, June time. And the first one, I'm going to be working with Nick Everard and Craig McIntyre and hopefully Mark Cann. And we'll be coming up for a day or 2 just to work through all this with you. And we'll be aiming to do that 2 or 3 times a year. Secondly, we're going to be putting together a platform of information, working in line with all the other various initiatives going on right now. We're going to have a specific dedicated employment page, probably on the website, where we'll be putting up all the information you need to start this journey and to inform you, even if you even want to start on this journey. So all the resources around CV building, interview tips, etc., but also links to job boards that have specific military focuses, and also to charities. There's a huge number of charities out there now that specifically train forces leavers in various trades and professions as they move into Civvy Street. Things like Tech for Troops, Building for Heroes, and I personally ran one in cybersecurity last year for forces leavers. The next phase will be building a mentoring network. So again, in line with the other initiatives, we want to pull on the Lancer community, reaching out to the OCA and bringing in as many people with varied experiences as we possibly can. Firstly, to get you involved, to come to the regiment and talk to people about the industry, that you're working in. Talk to people about the experiences you've had moving into Civvy Street. Again, that video was fantastic, and it's not always the right thing for everybody. And it's important to find that out early on in the process. But most importantly, we'll be providing through this mentoring, so that as people leave the forces, they'll be able to link up with someone in their local area who's got some experience of the job market, and just to ask the silly questions. You know, what do I wear to my interview? Where is this? What's this industry like? To really give you that background and information. I think even more so in the current market environment, Civvy Street is tricky. So the aim is really to provide you with as much background and expertise in the build up to that journey. And really, I'm reaching out to as many of you on this webinar and all your mates out there to get involved with us. If you've got experiences you want to share, whether that's by blogs that we'll start producing, or actually coming and talking to the serving regiment and people looking to leave, or perhaps being part of that mentoring organization, we'd love to hear from you. So please either get in touch direct or reach out via home headquarters. But thank you very much. And I'll now hand over to Tom Hughes to talk a little bit about V-Lancer.
I miss the army.
Okay, good evening all. My name's Tom Hughes. I served with the 9th 12th Lancers from 2007 to 2013, and I'm part of a team on the V-Lancer project, along with Ed Short. Now this project started after the very tragic loss of 2 Lancers through suicide in the last 2 years, and we wanted to do more to stop this happening again. So, as has already been mentioned, we identified that the transition from service life to civilian life can be very difficult, and we want to help with this. So how do we do that? Next slide, please. And again. And one of the biggest problems we found was losing connection with each other. Now, there are lots of separate Facebook, WhatsApp groups that already exist, which is great, but they aren't the whole solution. To improve this, we wanted to create a structure that people would identify with to make these groups as functional and as connecting as possible. And we decided to call this structure a virtual troop, or a V troop. So to support the working of these V troops, we wanted to give them somewhere central to advertise, which would provide useful tools and information for service leaders. And so we created the V-Lancer app based on the needs that you identified in the survey last year. So there are a number of key elements that we are creating. An ability to find your mates and join groups or V troops. To dovetail in with what Simon was just describing, the opportunity to access advice from fellow Lancers and Lancer businesses on jobs, career development and general life skills, to provide signposting to hundreds of different support services through linking through to the Veterans Gateway, with whom we're working quite closely. And most importantly, we want to provide a way of supporting each other if life is tough. And we're discussing partnership with a professional mental health organisation to provide the right access to support. Now, we want this to be equally relevant if you're currently transitioning out of service and just not sure what the next step is, or whether you've been out for several decades and you want help or support from fellow Lancers, or just to reconnect with some lost mates. Now, this app will let us do that for each other. So let me show you now a video of how it currently looks. Next slide. Here we have a very brief overview of the V-Lancer app prototype. You can see that as you go in through the loading screen, you have the opportunity to sign up or to log in. It takes us through to the home screen where there is a profile already set up. You can see here that there is a section to connect, which allows you to search for and connect with other Lancers. As you connect, you will have the opportunity to share your contact details with the other person. You can also search for groups. Listed here are 5 real groups with links out to the relevant app, so you can tap the link and join the group. You can also add your own group should you wish, so that other Lancers can find and join your group. Back on the home screen, there is a section on living your life. This will be a resource to help service leavers and anybody else who needs help or guidance with the things that we all need to know to keep our lives running smoothly. There will be resources here based on what you, the Lancer community, tell us that you want or that you need. Here is a very important section on mental health support, and we are currently talking with a mental health organisation to make sure people have access to professional support as required. And of course, if someone is in crisis, they will have the opportunity here to link through to immediate professional help. Next is a job section where people can both find and advertise jobs that are available. There is also a section which will eventually link through to the Veterans Gateway, which lists hundreds of different organisations which are there to help. Further sections here will, for example, allow you to browse and sign up to upcoming events or to list your own. They'll include employment skills, CV development, and the ability for us all to share useful information with each other. These sections will be very much driven by what you, the Lancer community, tell us that you want. Okay, next slide, please. Here we have a Okay, you've seen the video. So what is the ask? What is the ask from you? Please create your own V-troop, your own group. Tell us about it. We'd love to join those dots together, get it listed in the app so people can join in. We've built the prototype with the features that you've just seen, but we want to make this even better. So we want more feedback from you. We want Lancers of all ages, of all service backgrounds, to volunteer to feed back on the app so we can deliver to you exactly what's needed. And finally, let me reinforce exactly what Simon was just asking for. If you or your business has something to offer, let us know and we can make it available to everybody. So please email us on the address shown on the screen, and also please do ask any questions you might have in the Q&A afterwards. And I look forward to speaking to you then. And if I could now hand back to Rupert.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. Very kind. Thanks so much. We're now going to get Colonel Regiment and also going to get, hang on a second, we're going to get the commanding officer up on the screen. I've got quite a few questions coming through now. So it'll be good if the speakers can answer pretty succinctly. That would be good. I'm going to kick off with the first one for the Colonel of the Regiment. It's a question from Steve Hopkinson. What are the plans to celebrate amalgamations in 2022?
Thanks, Steve. I did kind of trail this on the last one. I can't tell you exactly what we're going to do because we don't actually know. We are in detailed discussion with the palace because whatever we do, it will really centre around Her Majesty the Queen, our Colonel-in-Chief, and we're competing with her Platinum Jubilee. It's, you know, she's much in demand, and while we're speaking to them, you know, we've got a thing we're punting for, which is a garden party at Buckingham Palace, to which we hope that we can invite as many people as possible. It's a possibility. To be frank, I don't know how realistic it is at the moment. It rather depends on timings and obviously her availability, etc. Plan B will be to do something similar at the Royal Hospital in Chelsea. And Plan C, we haven't quite firmed up yet. but it'll be something along those lines, and it will be marked both the centenary of the amalgamations of the 16th, 5th and 17th, 21st, and 75 years of Her Majesty as our Colonel-in-Chief in a proper fashion.
Okay. Colonel, thanks very much. The next question is for the commanding officer. There's a comment, quite a long comment, then followed by a question, so stick with me on this one. The regiment has quite a few soldiers at ERE who are keeping the regiment in the spotlight and selling the brand. These soldiers are also doing roles that are not necessarily recce related, but vital to the wider army. When these soldiers are graded against their peers back at regimental duty, some end up being graded lower, which has a knock-on effect on career progression. Okay. My question is, what are you going to do to address this divide in regards to the grading process back at regimental duty when it comes to promotion? And what process will be put in place to better understand these roles and those in comparison to regimental duty?
Thanks, Rupert. And to whoever put that in, thanks as well. It's a difficult question, and I guess the nice thing about being the new guy is that I can say I don't know with some degree of impunity. I was the adjutant some time ago, but as adjutant, you don't tend to deal with other ranks' careers so much. So I'll say a couple of things. One, I've taken a note, and I will speak to the adjutant and the careers management officer about that when I'm back at work next week, and I'll try to understand that question a little better and see what the problem is and see what I can do about it. The second thing I'd say is a massive thank you to those who are at ERE, who do, as you say, sell the brand on a daily basis to all sorts of people with whom the serving regiment doesn't necessarily come into contact. So thank you for that. That's brilliant. And third, entirely up to you. It came through as an anonymous question, but if you want to send me an email on Modnet, I'd be delighted to engage with you one-to-one on that after I've spoken to the RCMO. So sorry, I can't answer the question in full as yet, but I will be able to in a few weeks, I would imagine.
Okay, thanks, Colonel Will. Another one for you, going to be coming thick and fast for you. Hearing how effective a mounted guided weapons such as swingfire can be in theatre, do you think there is a distinct lack of investment in guided weapons within the army, and why?
I think there has been, in the sense that while we have a world-class guided weapon in Javelin, we cannot currently fire it from under armour. And now that is a recognised problem, and one of the things that the review, the integrated review of defence and security, etc., has been looking to achieve is to increase lethality in all domains, so including the land domain. And one way that we can surely do that is to increase the number of Javelin held at the lowest level, which our American friends have certainly done recently, and then to allow ourselves to fire it on the move from under armour. I can't say that we are going to be able to do that in the near future, but I can tell you that the Army is trying to achieve that. And I don't know if it will be on Ares, so the sort of Spartan equivalent of Ajax, but I very much hope that it will be. And I also believe there are moves afoot to try and do the same thing with Boxer, so the wheeled vehicle that we're procuring for infantry. Over.
Thank you. This is a question from Dick Borman to the Colonel Regiment. Any plans to get those leaving the army to register with the OCA/VLA and home headquarters? Otherwise, it's very difficult to keep in touch with those leaving. We have got home headquarters folk on the phone, so they may help us. Colonel.
Thanks. It is, I think, and Dick, thank you for your question. It's something we're really working hard on, and you know, I think we've been not helped in the past by GDPR and things like that. And we probably haven't been tracking people who are leaving as well as we could do. So again, it's an initiative that we're you know, desperate to get better data, and perhaps there's a plea to people out there. If you aren't getting things and the communication from home headquarters that you think you should do, then please get in touch with them. But it is an area that we need to pay better attention to, and we are putting quite a lot of effort into it. We need to kind of make sure that we know where people are. So thank you.
Okay, the next one's actually for Simon Vaughan Edwards. So hopefully, Simon, we can get you live back on the link again. There are many ex-Lancers on LinkedIn. Setting up a resettlement group on there would work well. Great for sharing jobs and advice. I think a few units have similar groups. I don't know if you can respond to that. Yeah,
I think LinkedIn's a great tool, and we'll certainly be using that as well. But it doesn't cover all ranks, and this will be for everyone. So there'll be a central repository, as I said, in conjunction with VLancer and the website. But utilization of LinkedIn, the Facebook groups, etc., those all things we'll be looking at. LinkedIn's great, and the job advertisements, etc., very directed. So no, 100% that will be within scope.
Okay, thank you, Simon. If we could put Tom and Ed back on now, I've got some questions about VLancer. First one is from Nick Wills. How do I get hold of the VLancer app?
Tom here, I can take that one. Right, so it's quite simple. You'll log in through the regiment's website, and there will be a link which will take you out to the relevant app store.
Okay, great. There's another one here. Well, there's a number of questions actually, Tom. If you could sort of bring to light a little bit around V-Troop. One of them very simple. What is V-Troop? There's another one from Craig McIntyre. What is the makeup of V-Troop? What kind of feedback will you be looking for? Will this have the capacity to go to the wider army?
Thanks. So I'll deal with the feedback question first. What we're planning to do almost immediately is if you can send us your details via the email address that was on the slide. In fact, I wonder if we can get that slide back up so people could see it. Send us your information. We'll send you a link so that you can access the prototype. You can then play with it. There'll be prompts in it that will prompt you with some questions, and then you'll have the ability to feed directly back. And we'll collate all of that so that we can deliver exactly what we need to deliver. On the V-Troop side, V-Troop is essentially whatever you want it to be. It's a group that you organise to keep in touch with people. But what I'll do actually is hand that over to Ed Short, because he's doing exactly that at the moment. He'll have a better take on it.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, I think that the V-Troop effectively is really just two components. It's a way for you to get connected with your old buddies and find people who you've been serving with, whether it's like the Op Granby talk that we've just heard from Troop Sergeant Major Bond, which is fantastic, or perhaps people you played on a regimental tour with. It's entirely up to you. Really, it's just a way to make sure we stay in touch, but also just to let Home Headquarters and so on also know that we're reaching out to people and helping them know who we're in touch with. I guess that's probably all I want to say on it at the moment, but like Tom has said, please do just let us know that you've got these groups. If you want people to join them, or you want to expand your network more, then this is a way to do that. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much. Question for the commanding officer. This is from Tom Gray. The services being offered to leavers sounds great. What is being done to develop the mental resilience of soldiers staying at regimental duty?
Thanks, Tom. That is an outstanding question. And I could probably answer it over a very long period. So I will try to avoid that. Firstly, I think we have a far greater focus on mental health and resilience than we ever have had in the past, and so it is something that the chain of command is interested in a way that it certainly wasn't, I believe, when I joined the army. And so, for example, the regiment has just done its own initiative where we conducted a mental health audit of problems within the regiment and seeking to identify the various causes of mental health problems. Now we're in the process now of scaling that up across the whole brigade and probably its affiliated units. And I think it's a genuinely important piece of work, which will probably end up at army level, so with a much more statistically relevant sample size. That allows us to understand what the problem is, and noting that obviously there are privacy issues at stake, allows us to some extent to take targeted action to support people. But I also think perhaps the more important thing is to take general action to understand what the problems are in the first place, and therefore to intervene in everyone's lives in such a fashion as to support them to the left of the bang, as people say. So before problems become problems, understanding that they are likely to be so, given who we employ and their background and all those sorts of things, and work with them from day one in all sorts of different ways to support them to be as strong mentally as we also seek them to be strong physically. Like I say, that's an incredibly complex question, and I could go into far more detail. And so that's something, again, I'll take a note of that because it is part of our work to develop the future ethos of the strike brigade of which we're a part, and also of the Lancers with our new ethos, which is currently being written. So sorry, again, that doesn't fully answer the question, but hopefully it goes a little way towards it.
Thanks, Colonel. Last two questions which we've got here, both to the V-Lancer team, so we can see the line of interest here. First one from Dick Borman, I think it's probably a very straightforward one. Is the V-Lancer app applicable to desktop computers or just iPhones and tablets? Sure, there's a quick answer to that, Tom.
Yes, at the moment, because everybody's got a phone, we are specifically aiming at mobile devices.
Okay. And then I think this is another one from Colin Whitehead. Would it be worth translating a military skill into civilian language? For example, a phase 2 signaller equals telecommunications operative. This would be useful on the V-Lancer app. So I guess translating it into civvy language, really.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good point. We've done a bit of research on this actually, and that framework exists. There are a number of bodies that allow you to translate military skills and qualifications directly into civilian qualifications. I've actually shared some of that information with the regiment already, and we're certainly looking to get that kind of stuff, or signposting to that kind of stuff, in the app, so that people can build that into their whole holistic approach of transition.
Okay, Tom, thanks very much for that. Those are all the questions that have come through so far. If anybody's got any other questions, and obviously you can sort of send them through and we'll answer them outside of this call. On the basis of that, I'm now going to hand back to Colonel of the Regiment to close this session, so we achieve a hard stop for 7 o'clock. So, Colonel, back to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Rupert. Before I close, and I'm just going to be very quickly, I want to thank all of those who've contributed and given their time this evening. Really fantastic set of presentations, ranging, well, I won't even attempt to summarize them, but they've been exactly what we were hoping to get out of this evening, certainly from my point of view. I'd also like to thank the many people who contribute more broadly to the Regimental Association, who we haven't had time to hear from, and maybe we will do in the future. There are an awful lot of people out there who help make this tick. And on that note, I'd like to encourage others, perhaps who haven't got engaged before or felt they could contribute, to think about the way that they can do that. You've heard from Simon and from the V-Lancer community about the opportunities that will be on offer to, if you're running a business, or you're looking to support people, how you might be able to do that. I mean, even at its most simple, and the regimental secretary put out a note the other day, you can give money to the association through the Amazon Smile initiative. It doesn't cost you anything, and encouragingly, it actually costs Jeff Bezos something, which is great news. I'll ask him to send out that link again, but it's just, everybody can make a difference here, so I'd encourage you to do that. Finally, and Rupert mentioned it at the beginning, if you've got any ideas for the future for these webinars or any feedback, then please fill out the survey and let us know. Or indeed, if you've got any broader commentary that you feel is ideally constructive, then please get in touch with Home Headquarters. We do want to hear what your thoughts are and what your needs are, and we can shape the way we do these sort of things in the future. That's really all I've got to say, and I'll draw it to close there. It's been wonderful to have so many of you on the call today, and it'll be even better when we're actually able to assemble in person. Cavalry Memorial is, and this won't come as a surprise to anybody, is going to be another casualty of COVID for this year, for the second year running. But I do sincerely hope that by the autumn we're able to meet face to face and really celebrate together the unique bonds that bind us all together as a big Lancer family that really looks out for each other. So that's it. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Thank you again to all the presenters and for those who joined us. Have a good evening, and I look forward to seeing you either on the next one or indeed face-to-face in the future. Goodbye.